speaking against your own interest. So only a person of confidence, a real professional, not only believes, but speaks in a way that is true, which is this. This is something that I absolutely 100% believe in. And the scarcity salesperson, the scarcity entrepreneur, the scarcity real estate agent, whether or not they believe it, cannot communicate it. That the fact of the matter is this: you are not the right agent for every single seller on the planet. And the fact that most people say that they are, that the bias towards that is so deep, is causing them to lose opportunities left and right. Because isn't it reasonable to believe that there are times, situations, people, properties that just don't make sense for you or for the seller? And to think that it is 100% of the time, I think, is very dangerous. You aren't the right agent for every single human being on the planet. That is the truth. There are times when it makes sense for that person to work with another real estate agent that is not you. As an example, what if you find that the property is worth $500,000 and the seller isn't interested in necessarily selling unless they got $650,000? Wouldn't it then be reasonable that you, as the business owner, say to yourself, well, I'm not the right agent for you because I am in the business of selling homes, where there are a lot of agents that are in the business of listing homes that don't sell? So we have to speak against our own interests to do a couple things. Number one, it's because it's real. Number two, it's the fastest way to build credibility with another human being. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about a situation where you're looking to consume something, and your guard, like every other humans on the planet, your guard is up, protecting yourself from not being sold, but to get the truth. And let's just say, as an example, you might be looking to buy a new car, as an example, and you're looking at a couple different vehicles. And a car salesman says, hey, rather than try to convince you to buy this Ford Explorer, you might drive this thing and find out you hate this Ford Explorer, and you might find that a Chevy Tahoe is a lot better. And so rather than try to decide that right now, why don't you come in, take a spin, and if it's not for you, I can refer you to a great Chevy dealership right down the road. Now you tell me, be honest, if a car salesman was to communicate that way, do you feel safe? Do you feel as though they have your best interest at heart? I would. And because he's just being honest, isn't it reasonable that the Explorer might not be for you, that the Tahoe, in fact, might be a better fit? We don't know. We've got to take a lot of things into consideration. So the prospect in this example under principle number 3 says something like this. Other agents, listen, are willing to list the home at a discounted commission. Can you discount your commission as well? The amateur says, well, of course, I can match that. No problem. No problem. Where, just like we were talking about, the professional might say something like this. Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect, I'm so glad you brought that up. And would it be okay if I shared one of my biggest concerns? There's another universal yes question. Prospect says, well, sure. This is how you get the prospects to lean in, to engage, to captivate the audience. They're like, wow, your concern. What is your concern? I asked, could you discount your commission? You say, I'm actually glad you brought that up. Can I share with you one of my biggest concerns? Prospect's now leaning in. You say, listen, regardless if we end up working together or not, right? We're always communicating from a place of abundance. regardless if we end up working together or not. And I'm not suggesting we should or that we will. There are hundreds of agents that would love to discount their commission if it meant that you would list your home with them. And if that's what you want, and it's okay if it is, listen, I might not be the agent for you. But is strategically placed here, if you're more concerned with hiring a professional that will get you the most money in your pocket, then it might make sense for us to continue talking, because commission is what you pay, and what you net in your pocket is something completely different. Does that make sense? Now we're giving the prospect a new world view that they most likely already agree with. Did you catch it? The worldview here is this, that there are times in our life where paying the least amount of money for something ended up being the wrong decision. There are times where we went the cheap route and we regretted it. There are times where the thing that was seemingly less expensive ended up being less valuable. This is the worldview. And we're trying to explain this to the seller that, listen, if your single most concern is to pay the least amount in commission, think about that, be smart. That's not what the sellers are saying. The sellers are bringing up a discounted commission. Why? Because they believe the correlation is that they end up netting more money if they pay less in commission. Is that true? The answer to that is no, it is not true. If one agent sells the house at $200,000 and charges 4%, and another agent is able to sell that exact same house, well, I'll stick on the first example, $200,000 at 4%, can't negotiate inspections, can't negotiate appraisals, can't negotiate anything. They get railroaded, and that seller ends up walking away with $187 as a final sales price. And then the other agent comes in, sells the house at $210 because she negotiated up front, and they held their ground throughout the transaction. And now we have a $20-something thousand discrepancy, and a 2% increase in commission. Is the seller better off with the agent that they paid more money to? The answer is yes, because they worked with a professional. That is what we are communicating here. So when I talk about speaking against your own interest, it's to bring up the fact to sellers that you are not afraid of the fact that we might not be a great fit. And if we find that we are not, it is okay, because only somebody that can be trusted, that does a great job, communicates that way. Whereas the scarcity mindset, the person who cannot be trusted, is always convincing, always has the bias towards closing the sale, getting the person to say yes, twist their arm, discount to nothing. That is the person you need to be skeptical of. Where anything and everything they're doing is to just close the sale, is a very repelling person to do business with. When you can speak against your own interest, not only does it portray confidence, but it's the fastest way to build trust and rapport with that of the prospect. Principle number 4, knowing their darkest secrets. All right, so what are we talking about here? Isn't it true and isn't it reasonable that we already know what the common objections will be, what the common questions will be, what most sellers are already thinking way in advance of ever having to meet with a seller? Well, of course, the answer to that is yes. Yes, we do. We absolutely know the common questions, the common objections. And so what if you created a world, imagine this for a second, you created a world where instead of waiting for the prospect to ask you the questions that every seller asks, instead of you waiting for sellers to potentially object or give you a concern that you brought it up first. You talk about being irresistible to another human being where you're bringing up their deepest, darkest concerns before them. I don't know if there's another way to portray confidence. I don't know if there is. Because the scared salesperson with zero confidence hides behind every concern. They're hoping and praying that they don't get the tough questions. Ooh, I hope they don't ask that. Let me skate around that one. That's the person you got to be nervous of, isn't it? Versus the person who says, listen, oftentimes there are people that have done this thing or that thing that have questions about this, that, or the other thing. And the person's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is that I was thinking. Now they know they can trust you because you're bringing up things that everybody's concerned with. Now, the counter argument to that is, why would you bring something up ahead of time? Well, because it's going to come up whether you bring it up or not. So I'm going to get in front of it versus try to skate around it. Because if the prospect brings up something and you don't, they beat you to it, you have to be on the defensive. They take the control, the influence back from you. So we're staying proactive. So it's exactly what you see on screen. Bring up the prospect's biggest concerns before they do. It's the best way to build trust, to build credibility. Here's an example. Mrs. Seller, it's not uncommon for sellers to want to list their home for more than what the data suggests. Can I share a quick story from one of my past clients that might be useful in this conversation? There's another universal yes question. What is the seller going to say? No, I don't want to hear that. They're going to say, sure. And then you can use the power of third-party stories, because sellers don't want to be told what to do. They don't believe what you say. They rarely believe what you show them. But social proof has taught us that monkey see, monkey do. Here's what another seller tried to do. Here's what they experienced. Now the seller sees themselves in the other seller's shoes. It isn't you telling them what to do. Hopefully that makes sense. Principle number 5, getting prospects on the edge of their seat. Captivating an audience. This is what great storytellers do. So what great writers do. This is what great directors do that make phenomenal movies. It's to help us, the viewer, get on the edge of our seat because we are so intrigued, our curiosity, we're so captivated, our attention is so focused. Well, we can do the same thing. Great presenters, just like I said, like movies, hook the audience and demand their attention. So here's an example of what you might do to do that, to become irresistible. Mrs. Seller, there's been something on my mind all week leading up to our meeting today, and I didn't know how I might bring it up. But would it be okay if I shared my biggest concern? Now, when I say that to you, aren't you, as the viewer of this video right now, saying to yourself, oh my gosh, what would you say after that? That's the point. That means that I have hooked you. I've caught your attention. That is what we're looking to do. So let me say it again. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, there's been something on my mind all week leading up to this meeting. Ooh, we're eliciting what? Curiosity, lots of it. And I didn't know how I might bring it up to you today, but would it be okay if I shared with you my biggest concern? The seller's now like, oh my gosh, what is this person going to say? Just the same way you might be asking yourself, okay, Brandon, tell us. You see how powerful it is to use something like this. You might say something like this. I'm being nice to you, so I'm going to give you the answer. Mrs. Seller, many agents won't tell sellers the truth about their home, its condition, or what it's going to take to get it sold. Why? They have a fear that if they don't tell the seller what they want to hear, the seller won't list the home with them. Now, if you're okay with it, I would prefer to shoot you straight and tell you exactly what it's going to take to get your home sold for the highest price, knowing right now that there could be some things you may not want to hear, but I believe it's the right thing to do. Would that be okay? The sellers want an agent to communicate the truth. This is how we get the prospect's permission to be 100% transparent, to be 100% candid. It's how you communicate with confidence. It's how you portray or give the feeling, rather, that you are indeed the right agent for them, that you do, in fact, have their best interest in mind, so much so that you are willing to risk your own. And there is no better way to build influence with another human being than to put their interest, the perception of their interest, ahead of that of your own. So if anything today made any type of sense, like I always do, I will invite you to have a conversation with us and my team about potentially working together in a coaching relationship if you are interested in becoming a world-class salesperson who is not sleazy, not slimy, doesn't pressure prospects, but serves people at the highest level. Then I'm going to put a link underneath this video. Feel free to click on it. We can have a conversation, talk about what coaching together could look like. And like always, you can decide if it makes sense for you or not. Now you can see some of these principles coming to fruition. So if not, it's perfectly okay. I hope you got a lot of value from today's video. I was really looking forward to making today's video because there's such powerful concepts here for you to learn so that you can become so much more valuable in the eyes of the prospect. So if you want to continue to grow your business, become a great real estate salesperson, watch this video right here.